Welcome to the Victory Podcast, where we explore life, leadership, and journey. I'm your new host, Amy Forsyth, and I'm so pleased to welcome today's guest, David Gerfein. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Amy. It's an honor to be here and always enjoy spending time with you. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I enlisted in the Marines when I was 17 because I heard if you went to college, you had to read books, and I wasn't going to do that. So punched out and enlisted, and the Marine Corps had other plans for me, and they decided to send me to college and make me an officer. And also basically because my gunnery sergeant said I wasn't smart enough to be an NCO, so they had to make me an officer. So ended up getting commissioned. Loved every minute of it. Was an infantry Marine my entire time, and was fortunate to serve with Marines in Panama in the lead up to Operation Just Cause. Also part of the lead battalion into Kuwait during the first Gulf War. Company commander down Guantanamo Bay, where you and I met, and then worked on General Zinni's staff for a while. And around 98, nothing was really happening in the world, so I decided to go to business school, get my master's in business, and start working on Wall Street. And was in New York on 9/11. And, in my mind, our nation was under attack. It was time to return to active duty and get back into the fight. So I contacted my old unit, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. And not long after that, I was back in Afghanistan with the Combined Joint Task Force, doing operational planning and combat patrols against Al-Qaeda and Taliban. And then went right across, was one of the lead units into Iraq with a Special Operations Task Force there, opening up the border for the initial shock and awe into Iraq. So, I had a great tour, enjoyed it, and then was asked to help be a part of the operational planning for MARSOC when they stood up. And General Halleck asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, "Sir, you know me, I want to lead them into the first fight they have." He said, "Good, get up on Capitol Hill and fight for money." Well, not the fight I asked for, but it was the fight I got. Ended up spending final few years of my career up on Capitol Hill. Very interesting experience. Able to raise a lot of money for MARSOC Special Operations Command and the Raiders, and was proud to be a part of that. And then decided to retire and be a dad. And after that, the challenges really began, especially now that she's a teenager.
I've watched her grow up through your sharing of posts, and just such a wonderful experience for you, really. Your career is legendary, I assure you, because people, talking like, "Oh, I know David Gerfein. I know David Gerfein." So you've touched so many.
I think it's infamous, not famous. I don't know if anybody has anything positive to say.
Yeah, well, you've made an impact, that's for sure. So know that you've left your touch and your impact on so many through the years, and which has led you perfectly to all the experiences you've had. You went to school, Harvard Business School, working on Wall Street, 9/11. It just seemed like this uncarved out path, but fate for sure. And now, tell us what you're currently working on.
Yeah, so I have sort of focused a lot of time into the business world now, coming back, as well as in the nonprofit world. In the business world, I'm the founder, president, and COO of a company called Corp Housing Group. We're a real estate company that's out here acquiring large hotels, a lot of them which have been shuttered during COVID, taking over units from the Marriott and Hyatt and Hilton. We just acquired the Herald Square in New York City. We're trying to negotiate other big properties in the city, and we continue to grow and expand. Plus, we look forward to going public the first week in August, so just a couple of weeks from now. So we're excited about that. And we brought on a lot of people, a lot of veterans, and we continue to hire veterans as we move forward there. So that's exciting in the for-profit world. In the nonprofit world, I'm working with an organization called United American Patriots, in which we look out for warriors' rights. And a lot of times our warriors who are being accused of war crimes they don't get their rights preserved. And in America, we base our whole due diligence and legal system upon the presumption of innocence. And our warriors are the ones that actually fight for individuals' rights. And yet they're the ones under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, where there's tremendous amounts of unlawful command influence. They don't get their rights preserved. And there's sort of a presumption of guilt. And it's one of those challenges that we're fighting all the time. And we continue to fight for our warriors across the board, and we will continue to do so.
It's been amazing to watch, and your success in the private sector and the nonprofit sector just makes you a real true servant leader. And so I brought you on here today because we want to get some advice from you. What's the best piece of advice you ever received growing up and through your Marine Corps experience and your business experience? What piece of advice you received that was really impactful?
So, I think in different times in your career, you receive a lot of meaningful bits of advice, and it all coalesces into developing you as a professional, as a human being. Most of the Marine Corps leaders I had were tremendous warriors, leaders, and human beings. They were very well-rounded, and I was very fortunate to have mentorship from a lot of them, and still do. So I'm very fortunate. But I would say that one of the earliest bits of guidance and information that I received came from my mother and father. And my mother, who was from England, and she served during World War II. She was a nurse. And my father was a Marine during World War II. My mother had this term, well, it's not her term, but it's a term, it's noblesse oblige. And the concept is, as was defined in our family, those who have the ability have the obligation to serve. And so it was the whole concept of, God provides us all with certain strengths and abilities, and it's our responsibility to fulfill and to live out the best that we can be. So however we can serve on this planet to make the world better. And there's an old Jewish saying, it's called tikkun olam, which is to make the world more perfect. So in any way that you can combine these two by being a servant leader and improving the world, that's sort of our obligation, that we must do this. And so I was brought up with very much that servant leadership mentality. My father left college to serve in the Marines. My mother, when she was 17, she was inducted into the nursing corps. So it was sort of in my DNA. And it was one of those things that, again, you don't get to pick your parents. And I was just very fortunate. And from there, the Marine Corps was just sort of a natural extension of that.
Your beautiful mom was such an inspiration to many. And I loved watching, seeing her photos through you through the years. So thank you for sharing that. What advice would you give yourself, your 30-year-old self? What have you learned now that you wish you would have known 30 years ago? What would you have told yourself?
Shut up. That's only partially in jest. I had a great mentor, Lieutenant General Marty Byrne. He was the one who gave me the moniker or the nickname Bull. He gave me that early on, and it was his attempt to harness my energy and to teach me to use tact. And so, this is a Marine Corps leadership principle, but it's one of those things that it's so important, because even if you have the right answer, which you may not, and that's also a good lesson, is that you don't always have the right answer, because you don't always have all the information. But even if you do, there is an appropriate way to communicate. And when I say appropriate, it means effective, because you cannot impact the end state. You cannot manage your manager or lead your leader if you cannot communicate in a manner that's effective. And so that took a lot of time. And it was one of those things where, General Burnt was like, look, you're like this bull. You're coming in. You have so much energy and this and that. But like most bulls, you're going to get slaughtered. And so you need to figure out how to finesse. And the fact that the nickname stuck meant that it took a tremendous amount of time, a tremendous amount of picadors and matadors sticking spears and swords in me to get that point across. And I would say that there are probably a lot of business associates who say that I still quite haven't mastered that art. So it's still something I need to work on, is understanding tact and how to effectively communicate.
Well, that's great advice for many out there who can learn your lessons. But you've been effective, but I'm glad that name stuck, so people know you as Bull, the one and only Bull. Tell us, what professional achievement are you most proud of as you reflect back now, being retired for several years, but really getting back into the business side of things? What would you say is one of your best achievements professionally that you could share?
It's interesting. I remember, like, I've been really blessed to have, a lot of success in my life. That, I was given the ability to really work hard and achieve a lot of great things. But it's one of those things where it was interesting that whenever I achieved a goal, it was sort of a letdown. And I remember I was the honor graduate of Officer Candidate School, and my father was there, and he was so proud, and he was giving me a big hug. And I remember I said, Dad, something just doesn't feel right. Like, I should be excited. I've worked really hard for this leading up to Officer Candidate School and even through it, and learned a lot, along the way. And my father, again, very insightful, he goes, because the enjoyment comes from the hard work. The enjoyment comes from striving to accomplish and achieve. And he said, my prayer for you is that you never achieve all your goals. That no matter what goals are there, that you always have more, that you never become complacent, that you never sit back and rest on your laurels, that you never become too proud, and you never say, oh, well, I once did this. Oh, this is what, that you should always continue to improve. And again, these are Marine Corps mottos. Marine Corps humbles you every single day. That, it's, the only easy day, as SEALs say, is yesterday. And, it's always something new that, you have to strive for. You always have to prove yourself. And I think those people become complacent. They not only are hurting themselves, but they're hurting society as a whole, because there's always more that you can provide. And I'll share one story that, I don't know if it was my greatest success, but it was my greatest learning point about leadership. And it was really a turning point for me. And it was a tough lesson. And it was during the first Gulf War. And the Iraqis had already invaded Kuwait and then started coming down into Saudi Arabia. And 1st Battalion, 6th Marines, of which I was a part of, and 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines were pushed up into the fight to ensure that they wouldn't roll down into Saudi Arabia. We conducted a delaying and defending mission very effectively, and pushed the Iraqis back. And we were not ready at that time to conduct a full offensive and go into Kuwait, so we held at the border. And I remember that, the Marines, we had just come from training. Everybody was pretty tired, hadn't slept in quite some time, hadn't eaten in quite some time. And as we set in, I gave the order to dig in. And my gunnery sergeant, who was a very wise gunnery sergeant, who normally comes, brings me coffee at the end of the evening, we'd sit and we'd BS. He came around, he's like, hey, sir, look, Marines are tired, they're hungry. I understand you like to dig in, but look, Iraqis don't have any air. We're outside of range of the Iraqis' artillery. There is no chance of the Iraqis coming in and hitting us. What do you say? We let Marines eat, get some sleep. Tomorrow morning, we'll dig in. And it was a very rational argument. Yet I was taught from warriors who had served in Vietnam and those who had gone before me that the only way you survive indirect fire is by digging in. And there is no excuse for a commander that doesn't mitigate the risk. Because here's the thing, combat's a risk. Okay, there's a chance you're going to get killed or dismembered. However, your job as a leader is to mitigate that risk. So you can't control everything, but that which you can control, you must control. And this is a lesson that carries through with the business as well. So I said, dig. And my gunny was not pleased. And then I turned around, picked up my e-tool, and I started digging, set the example. Well, my gunny, being the professional Marine that he is, he turned around and he went out and he said, all right, Marines, dig. And you could hear them bitching and moaning, and they were pissed. Well, as if that wasn't good enough, I then walked the lines afterwards to ensure everybody had dug deep enough. And of course they hadn't. As good Marines, they tried to get away with what they could. And, I was like, keep digging. And as I'm walking by, like, I could hear them cursing me. And, they were like, I had pretty much figured I had lost all faith. I was a young lieutenant at the time. And, I was pretty certain that, if they could have, they would have fragged me at that point. But that night we set in after I ensured all the Marines were dug in, and I sat down with my radio operator, Corporal Melton, absolute warrior rock star. And I was like, hey, I'll get the first radio watch. He set in, and I sat there with the radio. And as I sat there, I was thinking, did I make the right decision? And I was questioning myself, and I was like, was I just being arrogant? Was it just sort of my need for control? Or was I really doing the right thing? Or did I push it too far? And I kept wrestling back and forth with myself. And as I'm sitting there, all of a sudden, this jet flies overhead, and the world turns upside down. 1,000-pound cluster bombs landed on our position, shrapnel flying all over the place. And I kicked Melton. I'm like, Melton, get up. And he's like, he was fast asleep. He goes, what's going on? Dash 2 comes by. World explodes all over the place. Melton's like, why in the hell did you wake me up for that? He was pissed that he's like, I was happy sleeping through that. But the bottom line was they were actually Air Force A-10s. They had been misdirected. They actually took out our light armored vehicle screen out front, then came around, dropped 1,000-pound cluster bombs on our position. We didn't take one casualty. Our Marines, saved the day. There was shrapnel all over our position. It had flown, all the shrapnel had flown right over our positions, but we survived. My gunny brought me coffee that morning, and the Marines, they kept digging. I was like, that's deep enough, guys. We got it. But all it takes is one airstrike, one indirect fire strike, and you realize the importance. And so, the lesson learned was you do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. As a leader, you're not there to be popular. You're there to make the hard decisions. And ideally, you're respected for making the right decisions. If you are liked, well, then you're a great leader. But you must be respected, and you must make the hard decision, because only the leader can make the hard decisions. And you must give up your popularity, which is something in our, selfie world where everybody's like, look at me. It's hard to break away from that intrinsic narcissism and realize, like, no, people may hate you. And it's ironic, talking about social media and all the rest. I have since reconnected with almost every one of the Marines. We've had many reunions and all the rest. And they were like, yeah, we hated you, but we now appreciate and respect what you did, because we're all alive with our families and we're able to celebrate coming together. But yeah, you made some decisions that pissed us off. And that's, so I don't know if that was my greatest success, but it was the most impactful lesson that I had ever learned.
Well, that's a very insight that I didn't know about you before, and we've known each other for almost 30 years. So I met you a couple years later in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba in 1994, not really knowing your background of those experiences that you had. And so all of these things you're packed into your life, and what what I hear you just describe is that your instinct and your training and your what you know to be true took over, and really, showed leadership. And what other people can gain from that is that being popular and liked, while some people may crave that, it's not at the end of the day the right path to go, especially in a life or death situation. And so your instincts really kicked in, and you knew exactly what the right answer was. And so
In fairness, I didn't know that that was the right answer, but I had been trained by those warriors who told me that was right, and I trusted my mentor. So I guess the other lesson is make sure you have good mentors. Make sure that they're giving you the right advice, and listen to them, because there's years of experience out there that people are willing to share. And quite frankly, wisdom comes from making mistakes. And if you can learn from other people's mistakes, then more power to you. General Mattis talks about all the books he's read, because that's how he gains years of experience, and that's what has helped him tactically, operationally, and strategically on the battlefield.
Well, it's great advice for anyone from the battlefield to the boardroom. Let me ask you about your what's next for you? What's your next big adventure, your next big challenge?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, we're taking a company public. We're excited about that. This is the first company I've ever actually taken public. I've been involved with public companies before, but really as a part of the leadership, this is a real challenge, especially in the markets right now, and dealing with the inflation we're seeing, and just the challenges to the hospitality industry, where we anticipated, we were diving in at just the right time as everything was being opened up after COVID, that we were going to see tremendous uptick. And then all of a sudden we see gas prices going up. We see costs of travel going up, and we see people who were looking forward to traveling. We're seeing more challenges associated with that. So it's going to be especially challenging, especially look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin came from 65 down to, I think it's 19 or so. So when Bitcoin's coming down, that the entire market's coming down, and there's challenges across the board. So this is going to be an exciting challenge. I'm surrounded by an awesome team. We've got some Marines on the team. We've got some former military, and it's exciting. It's definitely a different type of challenge, but our CEO, our leader, Brian Ferdinand, is phenomenal. And he is an absolute amazing risk taker and brilliant in the way he's navigating the storm. So it's exciting to be a part of this team.
That's wonderful. And I know you're up to any challenge. Like, if it's not challenging, you're not interested. So you're the perfect person at the right time for riding this wave.
I don't know if my daughter would agree with that. She's 14. She knows everything right now.
Well, what challenges have you found with fatherhood that other people can relate to?
Yeah, it's a tough balance, because on the one hand, you want to provide the left and right lateral limits for your child to be successful, but on the other hand, you want to give them the freedom to make mistakes, and to experience life, because you don't want them to have a coddled life. They have to fall down. They have to bang their knees and get bruises and get cuts. And I'd say my daughter, she's phenomenal. She's out there. She's an athlete. She's she's doing well in academics. She's a musician, which I never was. We're in a very different time right now, where children are being exposed to a lot of different philosophies that we weren't necessarily exposed to. And my daughter wants to get 1 million earrings, and she wants to get purple hair, maybe not purple, maybe blue. She hasn't really decided on that yet. And so the question is, where do you provide the freedom? And so on the one hand, it's like, all right, well, hair grows back, and she may decide that wasn't the right color or whatever. But tattoos are permanent. So maybe we're not going with the tattoos. Maybe we'll wait till you're 18 on that. But again, so the lessons learned in the Marine Corps, in business, they apply obviously to raising your children as well. And I've always seen my Marines as my family. I've loved them dearly, sincerely. I see it the same with everybody I work with. I have a genuine personal interest in their individual success. And I think that's an important aspect of a leader. And it's something that I learned as a Marine. It's never, oh, look at what I did. It's look at what they did. And it's never they screwed up. It's I screwed up. And it's really important to understand that as a leader, you can definitely make an organization fail. Okay. One bad decision, the organization can fail. You cannot, as a leader, make an organization succeed. You can point them in the right direction, but your team is what will make your organization succeed. And so at a business school, we had Richard Branson come up and speak. And, he's one of the most successful retail and customer facing business leaders that, we've seen. And it was very interesting that, he said, so in a customer facing business, what is the most important thing to remember? And of course, all the smart kids would say, oh, the customer is always right. The customer is always right. And we've heard this mantra over and over. And he threw out a bunch of expletives, and as he could, because he's Richard Branson. And he basically said, you're all effing wrong. He goes, your employees are always right. Look out for your team. Look out for your employees. Give them the presumption of innocence. Assume they are right. And if you do that, they will look out for your guests, for the various different people who are coming to work to purchase things from your business. And it was very insightful because it was very consistent with Marine Corps leadership that look out for your Marines. They will accomplish a mission. They will locate, close with, and destroy the enemy. You provide them the support. It's all about being an inverted pyramid, not the typical pyramid where the leader is on top, walking on top of everybody for their career success. And we've all seen careerists. The Marine Corps, in theory, and obviously there are exceptions, exists. The leadership exists to facilitate success for that young 18-year-old Marine to locate, close with, and destroy the enemy. If you're a jet pilot, that's great. You exist for close air support. Artillery, same thing. Everybody exists, one team, one concept, coming together, one fight to support those young warriors, because they're the ones that are going to win the fight. And if you understand that and you keep that in mind as you're running a business, you'll be highly successful. Now, take that over into parenthood. Well, you do the best you can to support, but at the end of the day, they're playing by different rules, especially at age 14. So it's at the end of the day, it's exciting, it's fun, and I think what father-in-law said, it's the toughest job you'll ever love. And I think that's fair.
Well, you're the fun dad. I'm sure I see you guys do a lot of travel, and, just her overall growth playing sports, and, you leading her into a wonderful, beautiful life has been wonderful to see. So thanks for sharing that with everyone. Yeah. The fun dad for sure. And the fun friend.
She would probably tell you otherwise when I take away her iPad.
For her own good, I'm sure. Right. Well, before we wrap things up, what are your top 3 tips for a successful life? If you could share that with those out there listening, what are your 3 top tips for a successful life? Not necessarily in business or in personal life, but really to achieve someone's maximum potential. What are your tips?
Yeah, so that it's a great question, and obviously I don't have all the answers. I know that there are, for each individual, there's going to be some nuances, and I know that there are some certain truths in my life, and I would say that number 1 for me has been service. When I try to serve others, I've been successful. That when I focus on myself, I have not been successful. When I have done things that were inappropriate because of to satisfy my own needs, failed miserably. When instead I was looking out for others, success followed. And I made tough decisions in my life, which, I was given these choices. And every time I made the right choice for others, it paid off in spades. So I think that's the first one, is focus on others first, and you'll see great success. The second part is find a great partner. I'm blessed, married to an amazing woman, Beth. It took me a long time to be the right person that would deserve such an amazing person. And it makes all the difference in the world when you're in a relationship where, again, you're trying to support them and they're trying to support you, and you're trying to outdo each other in the support and trying to facilitate each other's dreams, as opposed to using them for your dreams or your success and feeling that somehow you have to, that they're a negative reflection on you if they do something, and be like, no, they still live their life, and help them be the best person they can. And this all follows through into business as well. If you're sitting here helping other people on your team be successful, the team is going to be successful. So those are probably the two biggest things. And then I'd say that the third part is, take chances, take risks. This is not a rehearsal. This is it, as far as we know. Okay, there might be more. Okay, but as far as we know, you got one shot at life. Go out there, take chances, take risks, be bold, be audacious, and if you fail, that's okay. Get up, brush yourself off, and try again. If you read Abraham Lincoln's life story, and somebody just sent it to me again to reread, and this guy, he could not have been a bigger failure in his life up until he became president of the United States and then was reelected. I mean, and is probably one of the most iconic and memorable presidents we've ever had, who influenced the whole trajectory of our country, that unified our country through war to eliminate slavery and set us onto a whole different path. Like, just remarkable. But if he had quit along the way, where would we be? So in that bucket of taking chances and taking risks is always realize that it's never been a group that has determined greatness. It's been an individual. Now, an individual may have motivated, inspired, and led a team, but you need an individual who's willing to take risk and realize that when you take risk, people are going to think you're absolutely out of your mind. You're wrong, because people don't like change. And so it's a part of improving this world. Take chances, take risks, screw up, fail, get knocked down, get back up again, and try again, and just keep pressing forward.
Those are wonderful bits of wisdom and advice. And speaking of that last one, you took a huge risk when you decided you wanted to run for Congress. And so coming out of that, give us a little bit of insight. How did you bounce back from something like that?
How do I bounce back from actually doing it?
Yeah.
Not getting elected was probably the best thing that ever happened.
Well, you ran for Congress, and what district and what year?
I was up in New York. I was in New York's 4th district, and it was heavily 8-1 Democrat to Republican district, and people really didn't think I had a shot, but it was the right thing to do at the time. I was motivated by what was happening with foreign relations. ISIS was running amok, out of control, and it was frustrating seeing what was happening, watching U.S. citizens having their heads being cut off without any reaction, and just being, it was one of those things that I was motivated to do it, and really didn't understand the challenges. But it was one of those things where it was interesting, because as I ran as an independent, not realizing, as a Marine, you're raised very apolitical. You don't care who the president is. You serve at the president's wishes, or the United States Congress wishes. You support the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So you really, you're out there doing whatever you're told to do. You're not making strategy or making political decisions. You're enforcing political will. So it was interesting out there when I ran independently. People were like, "Are you Republican or Democrat?" Like, I'm an American, and they would get pissed off. They thought I was being deceptive, and obviously we've become more and more polarized recently. But it was interesting listening to people and understanding and being told don't go into certain districts, and of course I did. I didn't care. I went to Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever district was there. If anybody was going to be a part of it, and it was interesting to be a part of, just interacting with, Pakistani communities where, they were concerned about, how people were going to respond to Muslims. And I was able to say, look, I've actually defended Muslims. I've been overseas. I understand the difference between Islamists and Muslims. And it was enlightening for them because they didn't realize it, because a lot of politicians would come out with platitudes talking about this and that. Whereas I had actually been there, and I had actually, interacted with people all over the world. And so my experiences as a Marine, having, been to 50 different countries, really paid off. And plus, we're a melting pot in the Marine Corps, and nobody, our drill instructors will tell us, like, they hate everybody equally. There is no discrimination. And so we, as Marines, learned to coalesce and love everybody equally. And so it was one of those things that it was great when I could interact in any community, any group, and be able to be very comfortable and confident and communicate very effectively, because people recognized that I was being genuine, that I wasn't a politician. I was trying to be a statesman. Ultimately, I lost. I just got under 41% of the vote, but great experience. And, we'll see what happens in the future. Right now, we're focusing on business, though. The life's lesson is, although you have to listen to those people who are smarter than you and have more experience, sometimes, you have to take risks. You got to step out there. And, you have to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. And communication is key. And, you can always fall back and say, well, yeah, but you lost. And so that's a fair argument. And the question is, well, yeah, I was only told I was going to get 20% of the vote. We ended up getting double that. So, who knows how much better we would have done had we had more time, more funding. You never know. Maybe I never would have won, but great experience. And again, it's try it, be a representative. It's awesome to go out there and give it a shot.
Well, it's wonderful advice. Thank you so much for joining us today. And just truly magnificent to be able to, follow your career for the last 30 years or so and watch your family grow and enjoy that. So thank you for being on the Victory Podcast with us today. David Gerfein, retired Marine, businessman, and overall inspirational leader to so many people. Everywhere you go, you're making friends, and I appreciate you spending time with us here today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you having me on, Amy. Keep being awesome.
Thank you so much.